Well, I'm Keith Downey. I'm the chairman for the State Republican Party of Minnesota, and we are really pleased to be here today as part of our statewide fly-around. We had a really exciting convention, and I am very pleased to say that we came out more energized, more united, and stronger than we have been in a long time, and it's directly due to the candidates who are here with me. And so I'm pleased to do a brief introduction of them, give them a chance to offer a remark or two, and then field questions after that. So first of all, we have Stewart Mills, who's the 8th Congressional District candidate for the Republican side, and then we have the rest of our statewide office candidates as well. Mike McFadden for U.S. Senate, Jeff Johnson for Governor, Randy Gilbert for State Auditor, Dan Severson for Secretary of State, Scott Newman for Attorney General, and then we have Kurt Doubt, who's the Minority Leader for Republicans in the Minnesota House of Representatives, here representing the 134 state legislative candidates that will be running as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Stewart Mills first, and then again, we'll each make a brief remark and then answer questions. Stewart.
Thank you, Keith. It's absolutely awesome to be here. My family came to this part of Minnesota, the 8th District, back in the 1870s to work in the timber industry. My great-grandfather mined iron on the southern edge of the Cuyuna Range. We are Main Street business people, have been for 3 generations now. We know what makes this part of Minnesota successful. And the DFL, the modern DFL, has declared war on our mining industries. You contrast with the DFL's lack of a position on mining with the universal support the Republican candidates and the Republican platform has for mining. We know how to do better. We have to do better. And the Republican Party is better to represent our part of Minnesota going forward than the Democrats. It's no longer theoretical, it's no longer philosophical. Not only do we have the best set of policies for our part of Minnesota, but we have the best message. And as we go around our part of Minnesota, and Minnesota at large, universally, nobody wants to sign up for Obamacare. Nobody wants to turn in their guns. Nobody wants to trade in their paycheck for an unemployment check, and nobody wants their tax dollars to go to fund abortion. So this is our year, this is our message, and it's resonating very well with the voters, and we're looking forward to getting out there and connecting with them and explaining our message further in detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Stewart. And now Mike McFadden, our candidate for United States Senate.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I have to start with an apology. I lost my voice over the weekend down at the convention. We had a convention fight that went on for 28 hours, and what a great opportunity to have to be in front of 2,200 great Republicans from all over the state. As I think you're aware, my race came down to myself and Chris Dahlberg. Chris is a great class act. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and he has a big future in the Republican Party in the state of Minnesota. To echo on Stewart's comments, I look forward to taking the fight now to L. Franken. I want to talk about how we get back onto the pathway of growth and prosperity. We have a better message, one that I'll talk about how we let us do as Minnesotans what we have the capability of doing, and that's create, produce, innovate. We're going to get the minds open up here. We're the party that knows how to do that, to do it in an environmentally sensitive way. I have a 20-year track record of creating jobs and advising companies, small and mid-sized companies, on growth. Senator Franken and President Obama have perpetrated a war on jobs over the last 6 years. The big example here is the inability to get an answer from the 7 different regulatory agencies that have responsibility for making the decision on whether we can get the compromise open up here or not. So we'll fight to get those open. Thank you.
All right, and now we have Jeff Johnson, our endorsed candidate for governor. Jeff.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you guys for being here. I am just so proud to be running with this team, and I think together we're going to really push to bring back some accountability, some common sense, and some balance to state government in Minnesota. And probably my biggest beef with Governor Dayton is that everything is about government. How do you make government bigger? How do we get more money from people to feed government? How do we get government to have more influence over every aspect of our lives? And my focus will just be very different from that as governor. I will be focusing on how to make Minnesota's business climate actually competitive with the states that surround us, and how to make sure every kid in the state of Minnesota has a great education, whether you are from Hibbing or whether you're from Woodbury or whether you're from North Minneapolis. And I will be focusing on changing that bureaucratic culture in St. Paul from regulate and punish to one of actually serving the taxpayers who pay our salaries. And as others have mentioned here, I'm going to be a champion of using the resources that God has given this state to actually create good jobs, and I cannot think of a better example than mining up here in northern Minnesota. We can open the mines in an environmentally responsible way, and I will lead that charge as governor of Minnesota, and we will get it done. So again, we're going to have a great 5 months ahead of us. I'm looking forward to the battle, and I thank you for being here.
Saying as Jeff was speaking, I wanted to make sure that I pointed out Rob Farnsworth, teacher from right up here in Hibbing, Minnesota, who was also a candidate for governor. Did a great job on the campaign trail, delivered an inspiring speech, and I know how much people appreciated Rob's candidacy and his words. Great job, Rob, and we really appreciate you being here, so thank you so much for everything, seriously. All right, now Randy Gilbert for State Auditor. Randy.
All right, thanks. You know, running for state auditor is one of those obscure spots that most people have no idea who the state auditor is, what the job is for. And it's an important job as it oversees $20 billion spent on the local level. But my opponent has done a great job of letting the Iron Range know exactly who she is and why they should be voting for her. I'm sure you all don't need me to remind you of this, but our current state auditor doesn't believe mining should exist up here on the Iron Range. I believe if she had her way, the Iron Range would just become a big national park, and your only job up here is going to be working at a bed and breakfast at that new minimum wage that the DFL just passed. As your state auditor and member of the executive committee, I believe in mining. I would support safe mining. I believe that we need to make certain that our friends, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters are back to work and we can get the economy going back up here in the Northland. I will work hard for you. I want to make certain that we bring back the three biggest characteristics that this office is missing right now: knowledge, experience, and independence. With my degree from UMD in accounting and 25 years of auditing and accounting experience, we can have both those things in the office and mining up on the Iron Range. Thank you.
Now Dan Severson, our candidate for Secretary of State.
Thanks, Keith. Well, the Secretary of State is kind of most noted for its participation in the election process, and obviously that's going to be a very big focus for me. But the business side is another, and I think as you listen to the entire team here, Minnesota's hurting. And one of the reasons Minnesota's hurting is because government has become the largest consumer. And it's no longer the little guy, it's no longer the entrepreneur that can succeed. And one of my goals in the business side is going to be identify those barriers to these small burgeoning businesses, and then petition the legislature to change these rules, change these regulations, change these certifications to make it a much more citizen-friendly process. The other is I'm going to implement, it's called fast lane, express lane voting. And bottom line on that is it's not photo ID, but it is a voluntary system in which you can get through the voting process very quickly. If you're just willing to show an ID card, they'll swipe it, and you're in and out in 10 minutes rather than the 45 minutes to an hour that it typically takes. So those are a couple of things the Secretary of State's office is going to be working on, and I appreciate being here and listening to the concepts of the whole team. Thank you.
And now somebody from pretty close to home here, Scott Newman, our candidate for Attorney General.
Thank you, Keith. For me, this is kind of like coming home. I practiced law in Virginia, Minnesota a number of years ago, and I was there for about 17 years. Currently I am a sitting state senator, and I live in Hutchinson, Minnesota, which is in the southern part of the state. I remember when I was up here practicing law, a number of years ago, we were talking about copper and nickel mining at that time. And I can tell you that the inability to get the permits necessary so that we can proceed with copper nickel mining on the Iron Range and is vitally important to not only the economy for this area, but it's vitally important to the economy statewide. And I will tell you that the Attorney General's office has significant resources available to help in that process. And currently our Attorney General is not assisting in any way with the permitting process in order for you to get your minds going forward. So with the team that is standing behind me, and with me in the Attorney General's office, I can assure you that we will do everything that we can to get the permits issued so that the mining operation for copper nickel with PolyNet can be moving forward and improve the economy in your area. Thank you very much.
And again, our House Minority Leader, State Representative Kurt Dowd, representing not just himself, but also all of the candidates statewide running for the Minnesota legislature. Kurt.
Thank you, Keith. Obviously, we just finished up another legislative session, the second with complete Democrat control of state government in Minnesota, and it's been pretty frustrating. Our goal, obviously, is to bring some balance back to St. Paul and to bring some common sense. They are going to have a pretty tough record to run on in the next election. Obviously, Minsure has been incredibly unpopular, and frankly, 280,000 Minnesotans have been kicked off of their health care. And Minnesotans are paying more for health care today than they were before this policy was passed. So, Representatives Ansels, Representative Purcell, and Representative Radinovich all voted for that policy. And frankly, we think it's counter to their districts. Our commitment is also to change the current course and put Minnesota families first. Democrats in St. Paul really, unfortunately, have put themselves, politicians in St. Paul, before Minnesota families, with things like a new $90 million Senate office building and pay raises for the governor, the commissioner, and ultimately a constitutional amendment that will result in pay raises for legislators. Again, all voted for by Representative Ansels, Purcell, and Representative Radinovich. And lastly, the child care unionization bill that was passed last session, really the wrong direction. This is a bill that will cost Minnesota families that where mom and dad work outside the home, will cost them more for the child care that they pay for in an effort to make that happen. So, and the worst part of all of that is any of the three of them, Ansels, Purcell, or Radinovich, could have stopped it. Every one of them, each one of them, was the deciding vote on that issue. So unfortunately, they haven't put Minnesotans first. And our commitment is to bring our message of our positive message of economic growth and putting Minnesota family budgets before Minnesota state budget. We're going to take that to every district, all of the 134 districts all across the state. And I couldn't be more proud to have my candidates, and I know our candidates couldn't be more energized and more proud to run with the slate of statewide candidates that are standing behind me. So thank you.
Well, before opening it up to press questions, let me just conclude with this. In terms of our parties overall, I couldn't create a starker contrast than what just happened at our statewide conventions this past weekend. The Republican Party of Minnesota passed a resolution as part of its platform confirming its support to clean and responsible mining on the Iron Range and the jobs that it would create. In direct contrast, the Democrat Party had before it a resolution supporting clean and responsible mining with additional statements in that resolution about environmental protections and controls. And guess what? They shot it down. And they were advertising that and talking about that and tweeting about that all over the metro about how successfully they had shot down that provision for the state Democratic platform. That contrast alone, I think, shows you who's actually on the side of average, everyday Minnesotans. And we're going to make that claim this time because we think we're right. And you look at our statewide ticket versus their statewide ticket and who they represent, it's South Minneapolis it's the West Coast, and it's the East Coast. This group of candidates here represents everybody across the state of Minnesota, and I couldn't be prouder of our team and the work that we did at our convention in Rochester. So with that, I'd open it up to questions of any of the candidates. Yes, sir.
Bill Hannum, Suffolk Daily News editor. Mr. McFadden, Chris Dahlberg had taken the lead early on. Since you had, I think it was 7 ballots on Friday when you guys recessed until Saturday and went back to the balloting. The reports that we're getting were that Michelle Bachmann, who was not even running for Congress this year, was able to swing key party delegates to your campaign. Was that what made the difference? And also there was an inside battle between her and the Hubbards and KSTP, who had supported Chris Dahlberg.
Well, Bill, thanks for the question. And as you can tell from my voice, it was a hard-fought battle. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Chris Dahlberg. I've gotten to know him very well over the last 6-7 months. He's a great man. He was a great candidate. He has a huge future in our party in the state of Minnesota. We won because of our message, and we worked really, really hard. I'm not inside the heads of every delegate out there. What I focused on with myself and with our team is to go out there and compete as hard as we could. So we were on the floor until 2 a.m. on Friday night shaking hands. We had started, I believe, at 10 a.m. that morning. We got up the next morning, we were at the door at 8 a.m. shaking everybody's hand that walked into that convention. What I have focused on, Bill, as a businessman from the private sector, I have 20 years of experience in the private sector advising small and mid-sized businesses on growth. I know how to get this state back onto the pathway of growth and prosperity, and that's where Minnesotans want to go. And I think that at the end of the day, I am so honored and humbled that I was to receive the endorsement to be the U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party. And as you've seen today, we have a great team. You're going to see the resurgence of the Republican Party here in the state of Minnesota. We have a better message. We know how to get this country and this state back on track to economic growth.
Did Michelle Bachmann play a role in swinging the votes of key party delegates toward your campaign to leapfrog Chris Dahlberg and get the endorsement?
What we had an opportunity, Bill, is I have the endorsement not only of many candidates from across the country, and I'm honored to have each and every one of their endorsement. I've always believed in a big tent. I want to move forward. I want to get the Republican Party unified. We've worked hard to do that, Bill. We've reached out to independents, and we're reaching out to Reagan Democrats, and that's the group of voters that are going to allow us to win in November.
Okay. Just address
I won't try it anymore. That's fine. Just probably other question.
So after, if I could just answer that, because I watched this
Yeah, I
process
appreciate that.
unfold as an impartial observer. The McFadden campaign gained strength on every single ballot. And every single ballot along the way, it seemed for different reasons or a combination of reasons. There was a ballot where the candidates were up giving speeches, and Mike McFadden had assembled behind him literally dozens of state legislators wearing McFadden shirts. There were letters on the floor. There were snacks handed out. There were all the things that you do to try and win votes hand to hand on the convention floor. And so it's impossible to say that one of those ballots and one of those letters or one of those activities somehow swung the vote for him. In the end, the convention delegates had the confidence that Mike could win this campaign. And I got to tell you, the real reason is what you're seeing here today, with the fact that he can't talk. Mike McFadden worked so hard on that convention floor, hand by hand, delegate by delegate, to earn their confidence and their support, and it happened over a day-long period. So to say it was one incident or one person or one endorsement or one letter or one campaign flyer or one event, it just wasn't that way. It played out in a long succession of ballots, and Mike ended up winning.
So some of these news reports from the Twin Cities media regarding Michelle Bachmann's influence on that, inaccurate, are you saying, or?
If they focused on that as the single reason, then they were not at the convention.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, and the unity, obviously, you guys are speaking to that today, yet you're facing it'll be a 4-person primary.
Likely, yeah.
That's not unity from a standpoint of unity would be that, total unity would be that you're running without intra-party opposition for a primary. Was there an attempt to bring that together, and if so, why didn't it happen?
You know, Bill, we have known that there's going to be a primary for a year because at least 2 of the candidates said in their guideline that if they weren't endorsed, they'd go to a primary, and Marty has kind of gone back and forth, so we expected that as well. So no big surprises and no real efforts to try to push them out because they decided early to do that. So, you know, it's part of the process, and we haven't had a competitive primary in quite a while in Minnesota. And the few times that we have had it, with the exception of the Arnie Carlson example, the endorsed candidate wins. So it's a great value to have that endorsement because the folks who vote in an August primary tend to be very much like the people who go through the caucus and endorsement process.
Bill, any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah,
You got 3 minutes for an hour. That would be great.
We got 3 minutes.
Mr. Johnson, the DFL, Ken Martin, was quick to come out yesterday saying that you basically have embraced and endorsed Scott Walker, Wisconsin's governor's methods as far as being governor, and that you would follow through on that. Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, he might have been referring to kind of a rhetorical flourish that I made at a meeting a while back in answer to a question about, honestly, I can't even remember what the specific issue was, but the question was, can you accomplish something that Scott Walker accomplished when you don't have a Republican Senate and a Republican House? And my answer was no, I can't, and maybe down the road we will be able to do that. I think Scott Walker has done some good things in Wisconsin. I think our personalities and the way we go about things are probably rather different. But, you know, there are some things that he's done, particularly with public employee unions, that I think have been a positive. And I think the voters in voters in Wisconsin, who are very similar to the voters in Minnesota, are seeing that, which is why why he was reelected a few months ago, and why it looks like he has at least a good shot at getting reelected again.
Maybe if I could ask this, and this could go to everybody, the party chair, whoever wants to respond. When I talked to Ken Martin, DFL party chair, and I talked to other DFLers, obviously there's plenty of them up on the range holding office, they say Republicans will come and talk the good talk during the campaign about how they're going to support the area, but then they do not. And an example of that, if I could bring it up, please, is former Governor Tim Pawlenty, who basically called the 21st Century, called it flat out a slush fund, the 21st Century Minerals Fund, and also tried to take money from the Douglas J. Johnson Economic Development Fund. So my question is, obviously you don't agree with what they're saying, but where are you guys at on the 21st Century Minerals Fund and the DJJ Economic Development Fund, which is fueled by taxes, basically local property taxes paid in lieu of property taxes by the mining companies?
You know, I can maybe take that one, and the Democrats, and I might turn your question around back on you. The Democrats.
I'm used to that.
The Democrats have been talking the talk, but not walking the walk, and I think the mining projects up here are the prime example of that. Democrats have been out all over the state talking about how great the economy is, and the unemployment rate is low. And while yes, the unemployment rate is low, something that I like to point out is that Minnesota right now, frankly, because we have a great work ethic, and after there was a downturn in the economy, when folks were laid off, they found other jobs. But the underemployment rate is at its lowest point since Minnesota has tracked that statistic. 53% of Minnesotans are underemployed, which means they're working at a job at a lower skill level and a lower pay rate than what they're accustomed to. You know, we've talked a lot about mining up here, and we know how important those jobs are to this area of the state. The one person who's holding up these mines from opening right now is Governor Dayton. So it's time for Governor Dayton to get these mines open, or Minnesota's going to wise up and put somebody like Governor Jeff Johnson in place, who will show real leadership and show that we can provide these jobs in northern Minnesota. At the same time, we can protect the environment. So I think it's time that the Democrats stop talking the talk and start walking the walk, because we're ready to do that.
And the one follow, real quick, Mr. Johnson, if you would ask Governor, would you, if there was another financial issue, would you support taking money from the DJJ fund or from the 21st Century Minerals Fund to backfill any type of state deficit?
I'll be honest, I'm not real conversant with those two funds, but I can tell you there is more than enough money right now in state government. So I don't see any need to be stealing from other funds. In fact, I think that with the tax increases that we've seen in the last 2 years, we are swimming in money in Minnesota. So I can't imagine that we'll be taking money from other sources.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Bill, sorry, that's right. We've got 7 minutes, but I need Mike for that call right now. But we've got 7 minutes.
Oh, I do? Great.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Hope to see you guys up there. Not everybody's a Democrat. Thank you. They just claimed, the DFL has just claimed they are. Mr. Mills, Rick Nolan has been as strong as anybody in Congress from Minnesota pushing copper nickel mining. Is that still an opening, do you feel, in your campaign against him?
Well, that strength has been waffling. I mean, I'll point you to the article by Nathan Ness, who I believe is Don Ness's younger brother, the mayor of Duluth, who's attacked Congressman Nolan on his waffling on copper nickel mining, of being for it before he was against it and being against it before that. So really, I think that it's probably a mile wide but an inch deep, and based on his history of flip-flopping, I don't think that we can trust him. And, you know, Rick Nolan says that he's for the Second Amendment. Certainly he's not. The second that he gets to Washington, D.C., he lines up squarely behind Dianne Feinstein, received an F from the NRA, and you have to earn that F from the NRA. You don't get that easily. Not only that, is that Rick Nolan thinks that Obamacare is a great first step to government-run single-payer health care. He's voted against the Veterans Bill. He voted against Keystone Pipeline. I'll repeat that. He voted against Keystone Pipeline. So if you want to find out where he really is on mining, you can look both back at his flip-flops, but also his vote against Keystone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gilbert, we talked regarding Auditor Otto on the exploratory mining. Is that an issue that resonates in the Twin Cities?
Sure.
I know you've been very strong saying that, you know, we talked about that personally in an interview. But how does that resonate in the Twin Cities? I'm always curious about how anything resonates in the Twin Cities.
We're not 8 separate economies here. We're one economy as a whole as a state, and everyone knows that, you know, Minnesota was built on the mining, partially built on the mining right up here in the Iron Ore, the Iron Range. You know, I tell my story about how a guy that grew up in northern Wisconsin was affected when the ranges started shutting down. There's a lot of people that live down in the Twin Cities now that would rather be up here in God's country, living and working here. So when the iron ore is going and the copper mines are going well, everybody knows that the input, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but the hundreds of millions of dollars that the report from UMD came out affects all of us. So they do talk about it. When they hear about that, they're actually amazed that the state auditor had a role in saying, let's not, you know, I know even though the vote passed, that she would come back and say, let's not put mining out there. So they do talk about it.
Party Chair, what do you get a feel right now as far as the State House? Is it totally in play as far as Republicans getting back control of the House? And if so, is that, either one of you, are these, a number of these districts that are 50-50, 51-49 as far as registered Democrat and Republicans that are now controlled by Republican legislators, how do you see that going as far as gaining back the majority of the House?
Absolutely, the Minnesota House is in play, and I like our chances, and I'm going to defer to Minority Leader Dowd on the actual answer.
We're not lost by our last question.
Sure. You know, we are very, very optimistic. You know, obviously this is the first time in a generation that we've had single party control in Minnesota. And, you know, I won't go into all of the ways that Democrats have let Minnesotans down and prioritized themselves before Minnesota families. But to put it in perspective, we need to win 7 seats. In 2010, we won 25 seats. In 2012, we lost 11 seats. 7 is a pretty small number out of 134. And we have great candidates, unbelievable candidates, probably the best group of candidates that we've had running statewide in maybe in a generation. So we're very, very optimistic, and we think that we will be successful in winning the majority. But it's not about us. It's not a